Hi, this is Anthony. Welcome back to my show. As always, it goes without saying, be sure to check out my other videos. I have lots on true crime, unsolved mysteries like D.B. Cooper and the Zodiac. And in fact, that's kind of the topic of today's short video. Be sure to stay through the whole thing. Should we be leery of people who have written books where they claim that their father was D.B. Cooper or that their uncle was the Zodiac killer? And I ran through our used AI to come up with this list. It's interesting. If I were to refresh this, it would come up with a different list or slightly different list of people. This prompt is make a list of people who've written books claiming that their relative was D.B. Cooper. Of course, Shantae and Rick McCoy III, these siblings claim their father, Richard McCoy Jr., was D.B. Cooper and recently discovered a parachute in their mother's shed that they believe was used in the hijacking. If you watch Dan Greider's video, the parachute was not in their mother's shed, but the grandmother's shed. And very clearly, it's not. I've done a number of videos. Check those out on it. Probably other people have too. Experts have weighed in and pointed out all the reasons why the parachutes that were found were not the ones used in the Cooper hijacking. Why would he have chutes, or why would the grandmother have his chutes in her barn? Actually, it was more of a barn than a shed. He was a parachutist and had parachutes left over from his normal use, but it in no way connects it to the D.B. Cooper case at all. There's another person, that Bradley Collins, author of My Father Was D.B. Cooper, An American Story. And then Carl, I don't know if it's Laren, co-author D.B. Cooper and Me, A Criminal, a Spy, My Best Friend, about Walter Reca. Very few people believe that Walter Reca was Cooper. He didn't look at all like Cooper's description. There's a picture of what Cooper supposedly looked like. Reca was hundreds of miles, or 150 miles off course from where Cooper was supposed to have jumped that night. And he seems to have just been a crook and an all-time big-time liar. So probably none of those people were really D.B. Cooper. Here's a list of some of the people who've written books about the Zodiac killer, thinking that their relative was the Zodiac killer. Gary Stewart wrote a book called The Most Dangerous Animal of All, Searching for My Father and Finding the Zodiac Killer. Stewart claims his biological father, Earl Van Best Jr., was the Zodiac killer. Stewart presents details of his father's criminal record and resemblance between a police sketch of the Zodiac killer and his father's mugshot as evidence. And over here on the right, we see supposedly what the Zodiac killer might have looked like. He wore horn-rimmed glasses and had short hair, just like about 3/4 of all American men at that time. And of course, the composite sketches of D.B. Cooper look like almost every darker-skinned white American man in his mid-40s to early 50s in the early 1970s. So those aren't necessarily very good evidence. Steve Hodel, we all know Steve Hodel, a former LAPD homicide detective, suggests in several books that his father, George Hill Hodel, was the Zodiac killer, among other serial killer cases. I'm surprised that he hasn't tied his father to Jack the Ripper case. I mean, his father was very intelligent, so there's no reason that his father couldn't have created a time machine and gone back in history and committed those crimes, as well as all the other crimes that Steve Hodel has claimed his father committed. He uses as evidence, and this is what they say here with AI. I've read the book, and there's more evidence than this, but he cites similarities between his father's shoe size and that of the Zodiac killer, as well as his father's connection to the San Francisco Chronicle, a newspaper that the killer sent taunting letters to. Again, not the biggest connection possible. But again, if you're interested, his book or books are probably worth reading, at least skimming through to get his idea. Deborah Perez claims in 2009 that she helped her father, Guy Ward Hendrickson, write some of the Zodiac killer's letters and wore a mask during some of the murders. However, her claims were dismissed by police and contradicted by her half-sister. And Dennis Kaufman claims his stepfather, Jack Terrence, was the Zodiac killer, citing similarities in handwriting, discovery of a bloody knife, a black hood, and film rolls with sinister images. He sent these items to the FBI for analysis, but the results are not publicly known. So what to make of all these things? Well, the Zodiac killer and D.B. Cooper or Dan Cooper suspects may not have had children, but they were children of parents. So they certainly had parents. They probably had brothers and or sisters. They probably had nieces and nephews. So it's not impossible for somebody to come up with a legitimate suspect that was related to them. I think that's, a perfectly acceptable way of coming upon, more clues and coming up with a legitimate suspect or candidate. Doesn't mean that just because somebody thinks that they're relative based on them kind of looking like a police sketch makes the person D.B. Cooper or the Zodiac killer. And some of the people, I don't know if Deborah Perez is one of them, but there's a number, and it tends to be women, who come up with quite outlandish claims sometimes, and I think that sometimes they have are sincerely afflicted by some type of mental illness and trying to piece together some difficult aspects of their life, sometimes using a Zodiac type killer, serial killer, somebody like D.B. Cooper, as their father, helps explain things in a way that's more easy for them to digest. What otherwise is trauma as a result of perhaps molestation from their father or another family member, or other types of mental illness, or a combination of those. So I think that we need to be very cautious anytime we read any type of book, whether it's by a relative or someone else, when they claim that they've solved these cases. But just because somebody's related to one of these suspects doesn't necessarily mean that we should outright dismiss them. And I think that some prominent researchers sometimes are quick to dismiss people's books. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Leave comments in the comments section. I always read them. I respond to them eventually when I have time. Hit like, hit subscribe. Check out my other videos. I do a wide range of videos on unsolved capers such as these, as well as other things. I look at stock investing and collecting things. So thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.